So when I started this channel, one of the first things that I was really aiming to do was really just something personal, trying to figure out or practice or learn how to verbally articulate philosophy, especially my own philosophy, because I've been so used to writing for such a long time and presenting my ideas in a written form that I had little to no experience kind of just talking about them. And I noticed that when I would talk about them with people, it would take a lot of effort to explain things in a simple way. And I would often kind of go around and around talking about the topic, and I just didn't know how to present it in the best kind of way, I suppose. So I wanted to get some practice talking about it, because when you constantly have to uh, translate your ideas into the spoken form rather than the written form, then you get a little bit better at speaking about them, at compartmentalizing things, compressing things, describing things in a way that people can understand, and you can get feedback about those ideas online in the comments, that kind of thing. And so really from the beginning, that's kind of what this YouTube channel has been about, though some other things have come up in that kind of project which relate to my philosophy, like authenticity, right? And authentic exposure. The idea that this whole process of learning how to articulate my philosophy, the whole process of learning how to make videos and post them on YouTube and share my ideas with other people, uh, even though they're not all necessarily complete, or I'm not all that skilled at talking about them yet. I wanted to, as I was practicing this articulation of philosophical ideas, to put it in a place where people could see it, so that they could see the growth of that skill over time, and so that if I ever got to a place of recognition where people are really interested in the kinds of ideas that I was talking about or writing about, that they could see the growth of the ability to talk about ideas over time. They could see the growth of creating videos over time. They could see the growth in the development of the ideas over time. And again, this reflected a sort of underlying philosophical project of authentic exposure as practically as you can, and the idea that philosophical ideas, philosophical investigation is this ongoing developmental process and not a finalized project, which had been this concern of mine really ever since I got into philosophy. Because when you read works by the old philosophers, or even when you look at academic presentations and lectures, everything tends to be quite polished. Philosophical videos on YouTube tend to be quite polished, scripted, edited very heavily. People know what they're going to say beforehand, and they cut all of the mess of the development out there. And that was, in one sense, intimidating to me, because when I started out, I wasn't there, right? And I'm still not fully there. And I knew that with practice, that my skills would improve. I knew that with continued study and understanding and thinking about philosophy, that my ideas would develop and change, because I had seen that in my personal life up to that point. I had seen the growth and the development, and I wanted to be able to sort of publicly put that process somewhere where people could see it, where people could understand, okay, well, you're not necessarily, you don't come out of the womb as a fully born philosopher, or a fully skillful speaker or writer or what have you. And it paralleled something I had done with my writing, where for a long time I wrote in journals about the different ideas that I was having, or the things that I was studying. And a part of me had been pretty afraid to actually make any of that kind of public or for other people to read. And in this attempt to kind of get over the fear of publishing, the irrational fear of publishing and how people might react to it, I started to publish my written works on my Substack, which are still there if you want to go take a look at that. I started that a number of years ago, and gradually got over that fear of publishing, and now I've published on there more frequently, and now I'm even writing a book that perhaps one day people will be able to pick up and read. And so in learning how to articulate ideas and speak about them, I wanted to, I had that same kind of fear that, I'm really not that great at talking about ideas right now. Or there are parts of my philosophy which are hard to translate in this kind of format where you have to compress things and you have to leave out a lot of nuance. And it's easy to sort of blend different kinds of traditions together without these demarcating lines, because you don't have the benefit of a written word, and you don't have the benefit of going back and revising what you've written and editing in real time. When you're speaking, you're just really, or at least in the kind of speaking that I wanted to do, you're going off the top of your head and you're thinking in real time, and you make mistakes and you backtrack and you use the wrong words, and you kind of just have to depend on the grace of your audience in a lot of ways. And so that same kind of fear came up before I really started doing this. And so the other reason, besides just exposing the actual messy process of thinking about ideas and talking about them, I wanted to progressively get over the fear of recording myself and the fear of that kind of exposure. And so all three of those concerns have been brewing, I guess you could say, underneath the production of all these different kinds of videos. And what started off as kind of a simple attempt to just talk about ideas in order to get better at doing that turned into a lot of these different internal conflicts about, okay, what am I actually doing with this channel, and what do I want to do with it, right? What is the goal? For right now, it's kind of just a hobby in one sense. I just do this when I have some spare time, but I have enough time to kind of think about these things and, where do I want to go? What do I want this channel to look like? I think one of the things about YouTube, especially when you start to be a consistent creator, is that YouTube gives you these analytics, right? They show you where people drop off in videos, and the advice that YouTube often gives you centers around, capturing people's attention, sort of sucking them into your content early on. And they are often trying to get you to just contour your videos in a way that makes them flashy, that makes them saccharine, that makes them palatable to most people and hooks them instantly. And I had to, as that pressure from the analytics began to wear, I guess you could say, or get, to wear on me, I had to think about, okay, how do I want to course these things? And for a time period, I was experimenting, right? I was experimenting with outlines, with doing multiple takes, with doing hooks, with doing introductions, with stating my thesis before I actually got into the content. I mean, there was a lot of different practical advice for making your videos, I guess, more palatable and more clickable in one sense, thumbnails and whatnot. That I started experimenting with those kinds of things, but I found that the more I experimented with trying to craft the videos to make them more palatable and to sort of hook people in the beginning, the less authentic I felt, the more, really in one sense, icky I felt making these videos, and less fun it was. And so with that feedback, I started to think, okay, well, what do I want the channel to be? I mean, is this a channel where I'm just explaining my philosophy to people? Is this a channel where I'm trying to teach people about my philosophy? Is this a channel where I'm presenting these clear and finished arguments in this very structured way? Or is it something else? What is this channel about? And after thinking about that a while, I realized that really what I want this channel to be is as close to a conversation as possible, as close as a one-on-one exchange of ideas as possible. Now, there are also obviously structural constraints to that whole project because I'm not talking to a person, I'm talking to a camera, and then this gets given to an audience later. But I wanted to get as close to that conversational model as practicable. I wanted to be like I had stumbled upon somebody out there, and for whatever reason they were curious about, my philosophy or this particular question or my perspective on this given event or question or idea or movement or school or book or what have you, right? And then I was just giving them my opinion, my as unfiltered, unedited, real time answer to their question as far as possible. I wanted to make videos like that, put them out there, and the people who are interested in it could respond, right? Either making their own videos, which I would really encourage you to do because I think it's a more, you might say, an equal format. Video responses to one another tends to be in the same medium, whereas responding in the comments, it's a textual medium responding to a video medium, and there's a bit of imbalance there that's hard to do. But even I wanted to engage in the comments in that way as genuinely as I could. And so coming to this realization that what I wanted this channel to be was as close to a conversation as possible, I recognized that, all of the things that I've been experimenting with, like the hooks and the editing and the multiple takes and the outlines and presenting ideas like they're fixed. I mean, these are all things which you don't find in a conversation. If I wanted this channel to be as conversational as possible, then how I want to structure it is just to sort of pick a topic, something that was interesting to me that day or something that came to my head, and spend time on here talking about it with you guys. And originally the first couple times I ever really started recording myself, I had posted them on Spotify just in a podcast. And there are these, couple hour long videos of just me talking off the top of my head about the subject. And it had been a long time since I'd gone back and listened to them, but I went back and listened to them, and I found them to be pretty close to what the kind of content I wanted to make, beyond just all the dead air. There's a lot of dead air and these pauses that come in. So the one editing I've wanted to incorporate with these videos is to cut out the silences and the dead air as much as possible. Now, you're probably going to get those silences to one extent or another in a real conversation. But typically in a real conversation, somebody fills in those silences, right? So there's a back and forth exchange, and I can't really mimic the back and forth exchange. I can really only mimic the sort of monologuing, but the dead air makes the videos longer than they have to be. And I think it just interrupts the flow too much. So I will be cutting out the dead air, going forward. But basically, this is the format that I wanted to do, right? This is the kind of content that I want to make for people. And instead of trying to make my videos and contouring them to sort of a general audience or what I think most people would click on, I want to build an audience, a subscribership base, and a community that is based around this kind of conversational style. I want viewers who are interested in listening to long form content and are interested in responding to that themselves. I really don't want it to be, me up here authoritatively giving you, the truth of philosophy and trying to teach you these fixed ideas, but kind of just rather welcome you into an ongoing developmental conversation about the ideas that I have now, what my thoughts are now, and sort of invite you to be able to respond to that and to give me, an insight into your own process, your own ideas, and really just grow our knowledge of the world, of truth, of morality together as a community. That's the kind of audience that I want to build. And I think that you do that exactly through these kinds of conversational, open-ended, developmental style videos that I'm really making from this point on. And I wanted to make this video, again, just as a part of that exposure, right? As a part of that showing you, hey, I've experimented with these things over here. Now I'm gonna do this because this just seems much more in line with the kind of content that I want to produce and the kind of audience that I want to make. And maybe that means slower growth for the channel. I'm not all that really focused on growth. I mean, it would be nice if it grew. It's nice to have more viewers, all other things being equal. But if great growth comes at the cost of, contouring my content to general audiences and making just things palatable rather than I think real, or as real as I can in this kind of medium, I don't want to grow as fast, right? I want to find the people who are interested in this kind of content and are interested in responding to it and want to enter into that kind of ongoing development and conversation that I'm trying to produce here. And I think that this connects much more directly, or is a more concrete example of the way that I view philosophy and the way that I view the philosophical community, which is not a established set of premises, but an individual kind of project, and how I view philosophical communication, which is not about me giving you, the absolute ultimate truth here, but rather trying to paint for you a picture or give you a kind of map to the territory that I've explored as far as I can draw it. And then if you find it interesting, if you find it valuable, if you see something in the picture that I see, then you can kind of pick that up, incorporate that into your own, lifelong investigation. And so that's sort of how we can influence each other. We don't influence each other by giving each other dogmatic truths, which are of absolute and universal value, but rather we share our stories of philosophical investigation with one another that gives us more novel premises to examine, to understand, and to apply. I view philosophy as an individual project. I view a philosophy as something which lives and dies with the individual who lives and dies. I view a philosophy as something which is fundamentally incommunicable between people, because language is incapable of getting to the particulars of experience. It can only communicate culturally constructed universals, sort of rails, right? Rails or outlines of experience. It can give you a map to a room full of maps of concepts, right? Rather than the actual experience of life itself. And all language ultimately ends up being indirect, except insofar as you can point to something. And it becomes indirect because while I can point you to the path that I have taken, I can't make you walk down it, right? I can't hold your hand the entire way. There's a sort of individual responsibility to go out and investigate the same kinds of things. And you never quite investigate the same things from the same value perspective. Philosophy is necessarily normative, is necessarily about what the person values, what the person is trying to understand about their life and about the world. And two people can philosophically investigate the same kind of phenomena and come to entirely different conclusions on it based on their individual value premise. For me, philosophy is not this kind of foundationalist buildup from universally verifiable ontological and metaphysical principles that then get flourished out into the rest of the system by one grand philosopher. But neither is it the academic perspective on philosophy, where we pretend like we're scientists and we restrict ourselves to these specialized branches of philosophy, and we don't move outside those realms, and we just pick up dogma from the people around us to fill in our gaps of knowledge. But rather, philosophy is both holistic and individual. It's not piecemeal like the academics. It's not foundationalist like the old philosophers. It's kind of like a spider's web. You start off in your center of interest in the things that you're trying to understand about the world. You start off in your own history, your own context, your own, you might say, thrust towards whatever you're trying to understand. And then inevitably, because of the nature of reality, because of the nature of philosophical investigation, you spread out into ethics, into metaphysics, into ontology, into epistemology, into the philosophy of mind, into politics, into all these different kinds of philosophical branches, as a process of that fundamental method of philosophy, which is to examine assumptions and then to extend the consequences of what we investigate to the area of interest. And so in this kind of model, one answers philosophical questions based on how they relate to their center of interest, based on how they relate to the kind of question that they're asking, and they follow that as far as it goes, as deep as it goes. But it's not centered on philosophy as a whole. It is centered on their own subjective valuation, their own area of interest, and it's not cut off. It's not like, well, I'm an ethicist, so I'm only going to study ethics, and I'm just going to take the dogmas of metaphysics and the philosophy of mind and epistemology, and I'm just going to take these dogmas and incorporate it into my own crystallized field and not extend it out of that, which is really just a modern day form of scholasticism. It's not even really philosophy, but rather it is the individual expanding out into the investigation of the world as far as is necessary for the center of interest. Now, my center of interest has pretty much always been ethics, especially the individual and what it means for the individual to experience the world around them and to figure out how to live the best life that they can. That's sort of my center of interest. And my philosophical investigations, they extend out from that center of what does it mean to live a good life? What is the meaning of a good life for the individual? And there are political implications to that. There are metaphysical implications to that. There are implications of human nature to that. And the whole time I have to be questioning my assumptions, my premises, the things that I take for granted in order to remain philosophical, and then to try to extend that. But that is a lifelong process. You never really come to the end of it. You never come to the ultimate conclusion. And my philosophy presented to you guys, even in my writings, which are much more solid or crystallized, much more developed, my philosophy presented to you guys is something like, here are my thoughts so far. Here is what I think is true right now, based on the reasons I've so far discovered or articulated or understood. I assume from the outset that I don't have the ultimate total truth of things, and well, even that assumption comes under fire. But in one sense, I believe in reality and truth and the possibility of truth and knowledge, but I understand the fallibility of the human mind and the fact that it makes mistakes, the fact that it is difficult to get objective to your own investigative process. And I think there is a compromise epistemological explanation that can kind of bridge the gap between the two, which I might get into a different video. But the point is to say that, one can have knowledge of the truth or partial knowledge of the truth, and one can be mistaken at the same time, right? It's not you either have the absolute truth or you're completely mistaken, but rather each individual has, a certain grasp over the truth. And ultimately, it is the individual's responsibility to philosophically validate their own knowledge for their own sake, for their own centered interest. It's not sort of up to, I wouldn't say that the truth is up to the opinion of the masses, so to speak. If one person over here believes that the earth is round and the whole population believes that the earth is flat, the person who has the thought that it is round is the one in possession of the truth. But insofar as the individual gives up his responsibility for truth to the masses or to the authorities, right, to the philosophical authorities or whatnot, is the degree to which he again fails to be a philosopher. But at the same time, the individual is fallible, right? The individual can make mistakes. And so this is where it is helpful to enter into conversations with other people, because you get different perspectives, you get different premises, you get challenges to things that you haven't thought about. Now, just because somebody challenges you doesn't mean that they have the truth. And just because you think you've answered all the questions doesn't mean that you have the truth. But there is that individual responsibility of the philosopher to individually validate what it is that they believe, to individually question their assumptions and can extend their premises. And the truth of that philosophy is its dependence on whether it corresponds with reality or not. But it is not other people which ultimately validate the truth of it. It is the individual who ultimately validates the truth of it. And so I don't think that the philosopher should depend on an institution for the truth. I don't think a philosopher should depend on the masses for truth. I don't think that the philosopher should depend on any other thing besides their own mind. That they have to have fundamental trust in their own mind, at least philosophically speaking. And at some point, we'll get into faith at a different point. I'll talk to you about Christianity at probably a later point, but I kind of just wanted to lay out this video of this idea of sitting here and talking about my ideas with you guys is a reflection of my own philosophical project of authentic exposure, of a conversational style of philosophy, not the sort of ivory tower academic cut-off institution, not the the completely isolated philosopher building foundationally to discover the entire philosophical truth, but rather the individual who has the responsibility of truth, who has the responsibility of knowledge, who has the responsibility of validating the truths of the world, but who engages publicly and communally about their ideas, both in order to share the things that they've come to understand, which might be of value to other people, but also to get exposure to the other perspectives, premises, understandings, pictures of the world that other people have, philosophical or not, that allow the individual to expand their understanding, and can help them to validate their ideas, not by the other people's individual validation, but by testing their ideas, right? Testing their ideas, and how truth is not this ultimate product that you have, but is a gradual build up and a greater and greater picture of a holistic truth that you never really get to the total understanding of. I would say that's a premise. That is a premise of my philosophical outlook. You never get a total understanding of yourself. You never get a total understanding of reality. You only get a greater and greater understanding of it if you are diligent in trying to understand it. And that greater and greater understanding translates into a better life, as it allows you to navigate the world around you in better and better ways. That relationship between knowledge of the self, knowledge of the world, combines to actually help you to live a life that is meaningfully good, which again relates back to my own center of interest. It is almost a Socratic attitude towards philosophy. Today, the agora is places like this, is online spaces like this, where we talk about ideas with one another. And that is something I want to get back to, or to mimic as much as possible. It's difficult to do that philosophically in the modern day. I mean, I do that with street preaching, where I'll go out and I will share the gospel with people in the modern day public square that I have available to me. But philosophically, that's more difficult to do, more challenging to do. And this is really the space where you do it, right? This is a space where you share those ideas. And this is a part of how I view myself as a thinker or as a philosopher. Maybe I'm not, or perhaps definitely I'm not a great thinker or great philosopher. I certainly have a long way to go in my own understanding and articulation. But what I do firmly believe is that philosophers ought to publicly share their ideas and expose it to the other people around them. And they should be part of the public conversation. I think it's a very sad thing that people don't turn to philosophers anymore. they don't turn to the academics anymore. The academics are cut off. They're in their ivory towers being sustained by the violence and the power of the state. They have no incentive to actually expose their ideas to public use. They have no incentive to be useful, essentially, never mind to just engage in the public. And I think that's very sad. It's a very sad development. Again, it reminds me of the scholastic philosophers who were, again, completely cut off from the society that they were living in because they were funded by the power of the church. And they just sort of assumed their dogma, and they never exposed it. And it wasn't until the waning power of the church that we had a little bit of a renaissance of public-facing philosophy. And I'm hoping that can happen again. I'm hoping that we can elevate the public discussion by purposely situating ourselves in there, and by being willing to be foolish in front of people, whether that's speaking, whether that's explaining an idea, whether that's exposing the development. I'm hoping that we can move away from this kind of polished, clean presentation of ideas that just doesn't reflect the human mind. It doesn't reflect thought. It doesn't reflect the experience of philosophy that most people have. It doesn't mean that we have to cede the ground to a rationalism or pure subjectivism or just intuition and feeling. It doesn't mean that there isn't a place for more polished content. In fact, in one sense, I view the conjoining of more, you might say, professional philosophy with this kind of amateur, publicly exposed philosophy, that the conjoining of those two might actually be beneficial in the end, because I think they might reinforce each other. I mean, I've benefited from reading polished philosophical content, right? Whether that's on videos, whether that's reading books, whether that's listening to audiobooks or something like that. I've benefited from the presentation of clean philosophical ideas, but it's not even one half of the philosophical work that goes on. Philosophical work is messy. Philosophical development is messy. And public-facing philosophy is messy. But that's the kind of philosophy that I want to do. It's the kind of philosopher I want to grow to be able to become. And I think that even so, I think just with the practice, I'll be able to get better at it. I'll be able to get better at explaining the ideas and talking about these kinds of things with you, and grow my own understanding of the truth, and grow my own understanding of the good, and hopefully be able to benefit some of you guys with those ideas, and also benefit from what you guys bring back to me. So in any case, that's kind of what I want to talk about today, just to give you that update of where the content's going to be moving and the format's going to be moving. I guess sort of warn you ahead of time. I don't really know. Really just talk with you about what was on my mind today, which is where this channel is going and where my own philosophical journey is progressing. So with that, if you guys like this video, please give it a like. If you have any thoughts or anything about what I talked about today, please leave it in the comments. I would love to be able to chat with you guys about it, or even more ideally, again, like I said, make your own videos, right? Test your own ability to communicate and articulate these ideas in this kind of format, because I think that could be a really powerful form of communication. Again, that public philosophizing. If you find any of this to be helpful, it might be helpful for somebody else, and please share it with them. And if you want more videos like this, then please subscribe. And as always, thank you guys for listening. I'll talk to you next time.